When night falls, the darkness starts to speak. Between each breath and the silence, there are whispers no one was meant to hear. This is Night Whispers, where the dark has a story to tell. There are memories that sleep quietly for years until one small thought drags them back into the light. For me, it was the summer nights in New Jersey when my friends and I hunted for forgotten places left to rot. We weren't thrill seekers, just kids chasing the echo of something mysterious. Most of what we did was reckless and stupid, but one abandoned middle school still stands out, a place that reminded us how real fear can feel. Most nights ended with dust on our shoes and laughter echoing through hollow halls, but this place felt different from the start. The photos online showed long corridors swallowed by darkness and graffiti-covered walls that seemed almost alive. It wasn't just another ruin, it was a legend among local explorers. A 30-minute drive stood between us and the school that everyone whispered about, a place said to hold more than just the ghosts of its past. That night felt like the kind born from boredom and curiosity, a dangerous mix for 4 restless teens. The heat of late summer clung to the air as we packed our gear, flashlights, spray paint, and a few leftover fireworks from the 4th of July. None of us planned anything serious. It was just supposed to be another dumb adventure before college pulled us apart. Looking back, I realized that was the night everything changed for us. Our little crew had a routine for these midnight missions: sneak in, explore every floor, hit the roof, fire off some Roman candles, and run like hell before the cops showed up. It wasn't about vandalism or fame. It was about the thrill of breaking silence in forgotten places. Frank's spray cans clinked in his backpack as Yuri joked about setting off fireworks inside. Freddie, as always, grinned like he was born for chaos. That night, so were we. Everything about that night felt like clockwork, familiar, easy, almost routine. Yuri parked under a flickering streetlight a few blocks away, engine still humming as we grabbed our bags. The town was dead silent, the kind of quiet that makes every footstep sound too loud. When we reached the school, the chain-link fence had already been sliced open, a perfect gap waiting for us. No need to climb this time. It felt like someone or something wanted us inside. The moment we slipped through the fence, the air changed cooler, heavier, carrying the faint smell of rust and damp wood. The school loomed larger than any of us imagined, its windows like black, empty eyes watching our every move. Frank took the lead, flashlight beam slicing through the dark as Yuri followed close behind. I crawled through next, my heart pounding with that strange mix of excitement and dread. Freddie, of course, brought up the rear, fearless as ever. The door groaned as we pushed it open, releasing a wave of stale air that smelled like dust and mold. Our flashlights sliced through the dark, revealing the skeleton of what once was a school. Lockers without doors, desks, overturned wires dangling like vines. Every step echoed down the hallway, bouncing off the cracked tiles and broken memories. It felt wrong too, still too empty, like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to make the next move. Our lights cut through the darkness like blades, bouncing off dust and peeling paint. For some reason, we took pride in how bright they were, like explorers armed with tiny suns. The beam from mine was so strong it could swallow an entire classroom in white. Every flick of light revealed more decay, rusted lockers, torn posters, a lone shoe lying in the corner. The place felt frozen in time, yet every shadow seemed ready to start moving again. The graffiti told its own story, layers of color and chaos, names of strangers immortalized in spray paint. Some tags were art, others just noise, but together they gave the place a strange pulse, like it wasn't completely dead. Frank stopped to admire a mural of a skull wearing a crown, muttering something about respecting the craft. I just laughed and kept walking the beam of my flashlight, leading us deeper into the school's forgotten veins. The auditorium was a graveyard of memories, rows of broken seats facing a stage half-eaten by rot. Still, it had a strange beauty to it, the kind only decay can create. When we descended into the basement, the air turned thick and cold, like the ground itself was holding its breath. Our flashlights caught something on the floor, a huge red pentagram, its paint smeared and uneven. Nobody said a word, but the chill that followed said everything. We laughed it off. Pentagrams were almost a cliché in abandoned buildings. Still, none of us wanted to hang around down there. The second floor felt lighter, less suffocating. When we found a classroom with a spotless white wall, Frank's eyes lit up like it was Christmas. perfect canvas, he said, already shaking a can of paint. While he and I started tagging the wall, Yuri and Freddy wandered off down the hall, flashlights fading into the dark. The sound of our spray cans faded into the empty halls as Yuri and Freddy's footsteps disappeared. When we finally finished our piece, Frank stayed behind, hungry for one more tag. I drifted out, letting my flashlight trace over murals and signatures that covered the walls like ghosts of past explorers. The silence was almost peaceful until it shattered. From behind me, Frank's voice tore through the air, sharp and angry. "Hey, are you messing with me?" His tone had shifted, no longer playful, but sharp with frustration. I turned back, confused flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. "What bag?" I asked, but Frank wasn't listening. His eyes darted across the room, scanning every shadow like it might answer him. "Don't mess with me, man. I know you took it," he snapped. I tried to explain I'd been in the hallway the whole time, but the way his voice echoed made the air feel colder. Frank's anger softened into a mutter. "Must have been Freddy," he said, though even he didn't sound convinced. Honestly, it wouldn't have been out of character. Freddy loved messing with people. We swept the room with our flashlights, corners to ceiling, but there was nothing. No bag, no footprints, no reason. Just emptiness. Without the extra cans, our night of tagging was basically over. Still, the way that bag vanished, it didn't feel like a prank anymore. We figured Yuri and Freddy had already made it to the roof, so we started climbing. The stairwell groaned under our steps, but every door we tried led nowhere. After a while, the halls all blurred together, same peeling paint, same silence. I turned into a small side room expecting more rubble and stopped cold. My flashlight caught it immediately, another pentagram identical to the one in the basement. Only this one looked newer, the paint still wet and dripping. The sight sent a chill straight through me. The pentagram looked alive under the beam of my flashlight, fresh strokes, glistening red lines sliding slowly down the wall. Then my eyes caught something in the corner, Frank's bag sitting upright as if someone had carefully placed it there. My stomach dropped. Frank came in right behind me, his footsteps halting when he saw it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavier than the air itself. Frank snatched his bag off the floor, his voice echoing through the room. "What the hell is wrong with him?" he barked, anger masking the edge of fear in his tone. I didn't answer because deep down I knew this wasn't Freddy's kind of prank. It felt deliberate, invasive, wrong. We slipped back into the hallway without another word, our footsteps quick and uneven. The silence between us said more than either of us dared to speak. The pounding of footsteps came first, fast, frantic, echoing off the walls. Then Freddy and Yuri appeared, eyes wide, waving for us to move. There was no hesitation, no time for questions. Instinct took over. We bolted down the hall, our flashlights jerking wildly in the dark. Yuri was shouting something between gasps, but the rush of air and pounding blood drowned him out. All I caught was one word repeated over and over: run. We pressed against the cold wall, gasping, our flashlights trembling in our hands. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint echo of something moving far behind us. "We just need to go down," Yuri whispered, his voice shaking. "Any stairs, any door, just down." None of us argued. The hallways all looked identical, endless veins of concrete and decay. Every shadow felt alive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being herded. The stairwell creaked under our feet as we descended each step, echoing like a warning. For a moment it felt like we'd left whatever was chasing us behind. The air grew warmer, heavier, carrying the faint scent of dust and metal. When we reached the ground floor, relief washed over us, finally an end in sight. The hallway ahead stretched long and empty, our flashlight beams gliding across cracked tiles. For the first time that night, it felt almost safe. The hiss cut through the air, long, deliberate, almost human. We froze, every muscle locked. My flashlight trembled in my grip, its beam catching nothing but dust. Then came the voice, low and ragged, rising from the dark like it belonged to the building itself. "I should have cut you when I had the chance." The words sank into us like knives. No one spoke, no one breathed. The next moment we bolted, pure instinct, pure terror, running for our lives. We sprinted through the darkness, our footsteps crashing against the floor like thunder. But it wasn't just us, there were others, multiple sets, pounding behind, closing in fast. Their voices chased us, filled with hate and madness, shouting things I'll never forget. "We've got every exit covered," one screamed. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but fear kept me moving. I'd never known terror could feel so physical, like it had its hands around my throat. Just when panic threatened to overtake us, Yuri veered left without warning. I almost yelled until the beam of my flashlight caught something familiar at the door we'd come through hours ago. Salvation. We burst through it, crashing into the night air, lungs burning. But we didn't stop. Not when the open field stretched before us, not even after diving through the cut in the fence. Only when Yuri's car came into view did it finally feel real we'd made it out. Yuri hit the gas and the school shrank into the darkness behind us. We glanced back, but the night swallowed everything, no lights, no movement, just silence. None of us spoke until Freddy finally broke it. His voice was shaky as he explained what happened after failing to reach the roof. He and Yuri had gone down a floor hoping to find us. What they found instead, he said, was something they wished they'd never seen at all. Freddy said the sound drew them in soft metallic clinks like coins or marbles tapping the floor. Thinking it was us, they pushed open the door. Inside, their flashlights caught 3 figures draped in black sitting in a tight circle. None of them moved. Their heads hung low, faces hidden beneath their hoods, hands shifting small glass stones between them. It looked like a game, Freddy whispered, but whatever they were playing, it wasn't meant for us to see. The moment Freddy stepped into the room, the figures snapped their heads up in unison. Then chaos chairs, scraping footsteps, pounding the circle, scattering as they lunged toward him. Freddy and Yuri bolted, racing up stairwells until they burst onto our floor. That's how they found us. But afterward, nothing added up. If those people wanted to hurt us, why take Frank's bag first? It felt less like an ambush and more like they wanted to play. Freddy's theory was twisted but made a strange kind of sense. They wanted to trap us inside, watch us panic, maybe even enjoy it. Yuri had a darker take, insisting the pentagram room was meant for something ritualistic, maybe even a sacrifice. I wasn't sure I believed either. Part of me thought they were never really chasing us at all, just moving through the school's lower floors, waiting for us to come down so they could corner us quietly. The numbers didn't add up. One person had stolen Frank's bag, and Freddy and Yuri saw 3 more. That meant at least 4 of them lurking somewhere in that maze of halls. Maybe more. The thought still makes my stomach twist. On paper, it sounds almost tame, like some urban legend you'd shrug off. But being there, hearing those footsteps, that voice in the dark, you'd understand. Fear doesn't need to make sense to feel real. We never went back, and none of us ever talked about it again. Still, sometimes I catch myself wondering who or what was really inside that school with us. They say the building's still standing, rotting quietly on the edge of town. I don't know if anyone dares to enter now, but I sure as hell never will. It's strange how a place can feel safe one moment and utterly wrong the next. About 5 years ago, I learned that lesson the hard way. I had just moved into my first real home, a quiet little house outside Spokane, far from the city noise I thought I hated. Back then, it felt like a fresh start, a chance to breathe again. I didn't realize that peace and isolation can sometimes look exactly the same until that night. City life had worn me down, sirens, thin walls, and strangers' lives bleeding into my own. I craved quiet, the kind that hums instead of shouts. The house I found seemed perfect, a small 1-story place hidden behind a line of pine trees with a gravel driveway that crackled under my tires. It wasn't much, but it was mine for the moment. Out there, surrounded by stillness, I thought I'd finally found the peace I'd been chasing for years. The house was nothing special, 2 tiny bedrooms, a dated kitchen, and a bathroom that barely fit 1 person. But peace doesn't need perfection. The nearest neighbors were far enough that their lives felt like rumors carried by the wind. It was quiet, almost too quiet at times. The hardest part was finding work. Jobs out there were scarce and slow to come by. Still, when I finally landed one, it felt like the last piece clicking into place. Life settled into a quiet rhythm: work, eat, sleep, repeat. I didn't mind the solitude. It was simple, predictable. Most nights I'd come home too tired to cook, living off takeout and silence. That night in late October was no different. I pulled into the driveway around 9:04, 5 headlights cutting through the mist. My body ached from another long shift, the kind that empties your mind until all you crave is a warm meal and the comfort of stillness. I tossed my boots by the door, changed into an old t-shirt, and grabbed my phone to order Chinese from the only place that delivered this far out. No apps, no tracking, just a phone call and a hope they'd show up. The quiet hum of the heater filled the room as I waited, scrolling aimlessly. Around 10, the doorbell rang sharp and sudden. For a second, I actually smiled, fastest delivery I'd ever gotten out there. "Damn, that was fast," I muttered, walking to the door. Through the peephole, I saw him, a man in a gray hoodie and jeans, standing too still, hands buried deep in his pockets. No delivery bag, no logo, not even a receipt. Just nothing. Something about it didn't sit right, but exhaustion dulled my instincts. I told myself maybe he left the food in his car. Looking back, that moment was when my gut first whispered, "Run." Something in me hesitated, but exhaustion won. I unlatched the door just enough for the chain to hold and asked, "You with the food?" He paused too long, then nodded, his voice low and uneasy. "Yeah, just need to double-check the order in my car." That's when the fog in my head lifted. His tone was wrong, his timing worse. Every instinct I'd been ignoring finally screamed the truth. This guy wasn't here to deliver anything. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "If you don't bring the food to the door, I'm calling the cops." He froze for a heartbeat, then muttered something I couldn't catch and turned away. His steps were slow, heavy, disappearing down the gravel driveway. I stood there, heart pounding, watching until the dark swallowed him whole. Part of me wanted to yell after him, but another part knew drawing attention might make things worse. I stepped back, closed the door, and locked every bolt I had. My stomach was twisting itself into knots. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I called the restaurant hoping for reassurance, but instead the manager's voice turned my blood cold. "Your order hasn't even left yet," he said. I froze, phone pressed to my ear, the reality sinking in. Whoever had just stood on my porch wasn't a delivery driver. He was there for something else entirely. My hands were shaking as I hung up. Whoever that man was, he hadn't come for food, he'd come for me, or for whatever he thought was inside. Maybe to rob, maybe worse. I didn't want to imagine it. I called the non-emergency police line, trying to sound calm while explaining what happened. The dispatcher's voice was steady but distant, telling me to stay alert. "They'd note it for patrol," she said. Somehow that didn't make me feel safer. The police hadn't come, it wasn't urgent, just logged for awareness, as the dispatcher put it. I convinced myself the guy was long gone. 20 minutes later, the real delivery driver arrived, food in hand, normal as ever. I ate, paid, tried to forget. By 1:30, the house was dark except for the TV's glow. Then came the sound, a faint, deliberate scraping from the back door. At first I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it wasn't. I hit mute and held my breath, the sudden silence louder than any sound. My eyes stayed fixed on the hallway leading to the back door. Then it came again, the slow scraping drag, metal against wood. Every muscle in my body locked. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The noise stopped, then the doorknob twitched. Once, twice. A subtle testing rattle, like someone outside was checking if I'd forgotten to lock it. The operator's calm voice barely steadied me as I whispered my address. Every second felt like an hour. I crept to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and slipped into my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I sat there in the dark, listening for footsteps, for breathing, for anything. 15 endless minutes later, a firm knock shattered the silence. "Police," a voice called. Relief hit so hard my knees almost gave out. 2 officers swept through the house, their flashlights cutting across the walls and windows. The place looked untouched, too quiet, too normal. Then one of them crouched near the back door. "Here," he said, shining the beam on the frame. Fresh scrape marks, thin and sharp. Someone had tried prying it open with a tool. My stomach dropped. It wasn't my imagination after all. I gave my statement explaining about the fake delivery guy. The connection was impossible to ignore. The officers promised extra patrols for a few nights, but beyond that their hands were tied. It wasn't the reassurance I'd hoped for, but it was all I had. Sleep didn't come easy after that. Every creak of the house made my pulse jump. Still, the next few nights passed quietly. I convinced myself it was over. No one would be stupid enough to come back after 2 police reports. For a while, I almost believed it. A few nights later, the distant wail of sirens tore me from sleep. Red and blue light flashed faintly through the curtains as 3 police cruisers sped past, tires hissing on the wet road. I stood at the window, half awake, pulse still quick from the sudden noise. For once, I felt relieved it wasn't about me. Still, a strange unease lingered. Out here, sirens weren't common. Whatever was happening, it was close enough to feel. I shrugged it off, assuming the sirens were for some domestic call miles away. But 20 minutes later, the sound that woke me wasn't distant, it was right at my door. Sharp, steady knocking. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and peered through the peephole. Two police officers stood on my porch, uniforms catching the glow of their patrol car's headlights. My heart sank. For a second, I thought they were there to tell me something bad. When I cracked the door open, one of the officers spoke gently. "Sir, do you recognize this man?" He turned his phone toward me and my blood ran cold. It was him, the same man from my porch, the one who tried my back door. My voice shook as I confirmed it. The officer nodded grimly. We caught him a few streets over trying another house. Relief hit me hard, tangled with a sick realization he hadn't stopped after me. The officers explained they had him in custody and believed his arrest might connect to my earlier report. "You won't have to worry about him anymore," one said with a reassuring nod. I thanked them, relief finally settling in where fear had lived for days. That was the last I ever heard of it. No follow-up calls, no paperwork, nothing. I didn't ask either. I just wanted to move on, to let the silence of the countryside feel safe again. Not long after, I packed up and left that house for good. The silence that once felt peaceful had turned suffocating, every creak a memory of what almost happened. Maybe nothing would have ever occurred again, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Isolation can drive anyone mad, and I'd already gone far enough. This happened only a few weeks ago, but it's been replaying in my head every night since. My name's Catherine, I'm 24, and I'm about to start my second year at NYU Law. If you've ever heard how brutal the first year is, believe it, it's relentless. Sleepless nights, endless reading, and constant pressure. So when summer finally came around, I promised myself one thing: I'd stop worrying, go out more, and actually live for once. Being back home felt like a reset. The air was slower, the nights warmer, and for the first time in months, my brain wasn't buzzing with case briefs and deadlines. Most weekends, my friends and I would hit the same few bars a couple of towns over, a small ritual to make up for all the time we'd lost to studying. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real. The laughter, the music, the faint smell of beer and summer air, it all reminded me what normal life was supposed to feel like. There was something comforting about the routine, the same faces, the same music, the same crowded bar that always smelled faintly of whiskey and cheap perfume. That's where Jackie and I were the night everything happened. We'd been there countless times before, but this night would be different. I should probably admit something: I have this bad habit of acting a little ditzy around guys. Not to impress them, just to see how they reveal themselves when they think I'm not paying attention. It's never anything dramatic, just a few harmless comments, a feigned giggle enough to let them think they're the smartest person in the room. And trust me, they always do. Maybe it's the alcohol, or maybe it's just ego, but most guys at bars treat women like props in their own stories. I'm not a genius, but I know when I'm being underestimated, and sometimes letting them think that gives me the upper hand. I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's a strange thrill in it, watching the shift in their faces when they realize I'm not as clueless as they assumed. It's a little game, harmless enough, usually. That night, Jackie and I just grabbed our drinks, laughing over nothing in particular, when two guys slipped into the space beside us like they owned it. Smooth, confident, practiced. The kind of entrance that said they'd done this 100 times before. They introduced themselves as Sebastian and Luke, two names that fit their easy smiles a little too well. Both were well-dressed, charming in that casual practice way that comes from spending a lot of time in bars. Nothing about them screamed danger. No weird vibes, no awkward silences. Luke and Jackie hit it off almost instantly, laughing like old friends. Sebastian turned his attention to me, polite, confident, not pushy. He wasn't bad company, or so I thought. Sebastian was surprisingly easy to talk to, witty, relaxed, the kind of charm that feels natural instead of forced. What surprised me more was Jackie. Normally she had a 2-minute limit with guys before rolling her eyes and walking off, but tonight she stayed. She laughed, leaned in, actually listened. It was strange seeing her open up like that. Maybe it was the drinks, or maybe these two were just smoother than most. Either way, the night felt unusually easy. After a while, Jackie leaned over and whispered that she needed to hit the bathroom. As we stood to go, Sebastian flashed a grin and asked if we wanted another round. I told him we'd take 2 rum and cokes, simple, classic, hard to mess up. He nodded and waved to the bartender, that easy confidence never slipping. As Jackie and I walked off, I remember thinking how normal it all felt. Harmless. That illusion wouldn't last long. Instead, I just shrugged. I wasn't particularly invested either way, but I figured if she was into it, I'd be a good friend and just go with the flow. As we were returning from the bathroom, I spotted the guys across the bar. They didn't seem to notice us. Interestingly, they weren't laughing or talking in the fun, relaxed way they had been before we left. I just shrugged it off. If Jackie was into Luke, I wasn't about to play the overprotective friend. We'd both had our fair share of questionable choices, but when we came out of the bathroom, something felt off. Across the room, Sebastian and Luke stood by the bar, faces unreadable. No laughter, no casual gestures, just stillness. They didn't notice us right away, and for a brief second, I wished they wouldn't at all. The lightness from earlier had vanished completely. They weren't chatting or laughing anymore, just standing there, motionless, faces blank like mannequins. As I watched closer, I realized their lips were moving ever so slightly, whispering to each other. The sight made my stomach twist. Something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just awkward, it was rehearsed, deliberate. But the moment Jackie and I got close enough, everything flipped. They straightened, smiled, and slipped effortlessly back into their charming act, as if nothing had happened at all. It was a small change, but I caught it. Their smiles returned too quickly, too polished. Luke slid 2 glasses across the table toward us, saying nothing. 4 drinks sat there now, our rum and cokes, and 2 others bright yellow, thick with ice, almost glowing under the bar lights. They looked out of place, sweet and innocent in a way that didn't match the moment. I didn't know what they were, but something in me instantly didn't trust them. They were the kind of drinks you'd expect on a beach, not in a dim college bar. That alone made me suspicious. I tilted my head, forcing a playful smile, and pointed at the yellow slush. "What are these?" I asked, pretending curiosity. Sebastian didn't miss a beat. "Pina coladas," he said casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world, but the randomness of it only made my skin crawl more. Something wasn't adding up. I leaned in with a mock smile, keeping my tone light. "You know, I tease these look a little too girly for you guys. Wouldn't want anyone to see you sipping them." I grinned, pretending it was a joke, then smoothly slid the rum and cokes toward them while swapping the frozen drinks to our side. It was quick, casual, almost playful. But beneath the laughter, my pulse was racing. I needed to see what they'd do next. I lifted the glass, holding his gaze as I took a slow, deliberate sip, the frozen sweetness coating my tongue. Then I winked at Sebastian, playful but sharp. Jackie hesitated, confusion flickering across her face, but she followed my lead, lifting her drink too. For a moment, no one spoke. The bar noise faded into the background. Sebastian's eyes narrowed, studying me, his smile tightening just enough to betray something beneath it, something cold, calculating, almost annoyed. Sebastian finally broke the tension with a smirk. "Touché," he said, lifting the rum and coke in mock surrender before taking a sip. That simple gesture eased me more than it should have. Luke followed his lead, and the air between us lightened again. We finished our drinks without a hitch. By then, Jackie was practically glowing, dropping hints left and right. Luke caught on fast, flashing that practiced grin as he suggested heading back to his place for a nightcap. By then, everything felt normal again, almost too normal. If they'd suspected anything, they wouldn't have invited us over, right? That's what I told myself anyway. We grabbed an Uber to Luke's place, a plain second-floor apartment in a quiet complex nearby. Nothing fancy, just beige walls and faint music seeping from another unit. Inside, it was spotless but oddly bare. No photos, no clutter, no warmth. The kind of place that felt lived in, but not by anyone. The place felt temporary. Bare walls, a couch, a TV, nothing else. It was like Luke had moved in yesterday or was planning to leave tomorrow. He grabbed a few White Claws from the fridge, passed them around, and turned on music from his TV. For a while, it all felt harmless again. We laughed, talked, the tension fading bit by bit. But after a few songs, I noticed something changed. Their voices slurred, their movements slowed. The mood began to tilt. Maybe 20 minutes had passed when the shift happened, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Their laughter grew louder, sloppy, out of sync. Words tumbled from their mouths like nonsense, their eyes glassy, unfocused. It didn't make sense. They hadn't drunk enough for this. Then, almost simultaneously, both slumped over on the couch, motionless. For a few seconds, Jackie and I just stared. The room went dead quiet. Watching them like that, it wasn't funny anymore. It was terrifying. It hit me all at once. My suspicion had been right. They hadn't just been drunk. They'd drugged the wrong drinks. Jackie, too tipsy to connect the dots, stumbled toward Luke, shaking his shoulder and slapping his face lightly. "Luke, wake up," she cried. I grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. "Stop, just stop." Her wide eyes met mine as I whispered, "Do you remember me switching the drinks?" The realization slowly sank in. "They weren't for us," I said. When the truth sank and Jackie's face went pale, oh my God, she kept whispering like saying it might undo what had happened. We sat frozen, breaths shallow, trying to think straight. I wanted to bolt get out before anything else went wrong, but Jackie wasn't ready to leave. Her shock had hardened into anger. There has to be proof, she muttered, scanning the room. I could tell she needed justice. I just wanted out alive. We searched half-heartedly, checked the counters, glanced under the coffee table, but we weren't detectives. And what were we even looking for? Some invisible clue? The whole thing felt pointless and terrifying. "Jackie, stop," I said, finally grabbing her arm. "We need to go." She hesitated, eyes still darting around like she might find the answer on the walls. But eventually she nodded. Within minutes we were out the door, hearts pounding the night air, feeling sharper than ever. We drove in silence, too stunned to speak. Calling the police crossed my mind, but what would we even say? 2 guys passed out and we think they tried to drug us. It sounded insane. By morning, the shock had faded into uneasy disbelief. We told no one and we never filed a report. Maybe that was reckless, but without proof, what could we do? Maybe they just got drunk fast, but deep down we both knew better. The thought still chills me. What could have happened if I hadn't switched those drinks? It makes no sense. Why drug girls who were already saying yes? That question keeps circling in my mind like a nightmare with no end. Maybe they weren't after a simple hookup. Maybe it was something darker. That's the part that eats at me the most, not knowing their plan, only knowing how close we came to becoming part of it. The more I think about it, the less it makes sense. If they knew what they'd taken, why invite us over at all? Maybe they thought their size made them immune, or maybe they'd planned it so well they didn't expect things to go wrong. But they did. Every time I replay that night, the logic collapses. It's terrifying realizing that people like them exist, people who risk everything just to hurt someone else for no reason. I still replay that night in my mind, wondering how close we came to something irreversible. It's a harsh lesson I'll never forget. Never let anyone else touch your drink, no matter how charming they seem. People can wear masks so easily, hiding intentions darker than you'd ever imagine. Trust, I've learned, can be the most dangerous thing of all. Thank you for staying until the end. If the dark didn't scare you away, maybe you belong here. Subscribe to Night Whispers and let the darkness find you again next time.